All right, so this morning I'm going to continue on the topic that I woke up thinking about. After talking to the high school teacher at the gym this morning, who admits that her son is very much so hopelessly addicted to video games, I came home and I wrote my own paragraph, which, again, I don't do much of my own writing these days, but I had to write this. Why have video games become the sole entertainment for millions of people? What changed in society to remove people from actual games to living almost entirely virtual lives where most people rarely leave their homes to seek entertainment uh, outside of their computer or console? I often wonder what happened in my own life. Was it my parents realizing that they couldn't afford to pay for actual entertainment and the box would keep you in a state of full, cheap, meaningless entertainment for your entire childhood? Are the corporations to blame for making video game addiction seem like it's a positive thing to waste all your time inside your home plugged into a life simulator? I mean, obviously, with microtransactions taking over, it hurt millions of parents that their children now wanted V-Bucks instead of socks for Christmas. Terrible, terrible thing to say. So I put my paragraph into ChatGPT because I was truly curious as to see what generic answer it would pull from the nether regions of the internet. So I'm gonna just count them off. There's like, I think seven of these. Oh no, there's nine. And the last one is, of course, our favorite, escapism. Number one, for many families, especially those struggling financially, video games became a cost effective way to keep children entertained. A one time investment in a console or PC provided endless hours of entertainment compared to the recurring cost of going to the movies, theme parks, or other activities. This economic practicality made gaming a household staple. I'll tell you this, my childhood did not include any theme parks. In fact, when I was talking to the high school teacher, I was asking her what she did for entertainment because she seems to be a 60-year-old woman that, from what I can tell, her favorite source of entertainment is books. She reads books. And anything else that I know about her, she walks her dog, she takes care of her children, she cooks food. But beyond that, her life is very straightforward. And as a child, I don't remember going to the movies very often, especially since I didn't speak English as a child. It wasn't practical to go to the movies. Theme parks, we don't really have any in Arizona, but I think I'm the only person who's never been to a theme park before. I recall, I've never been to a state fair, I've never been to a fair, at least in the traditional American sense of a fair. When I lived in Mexico, of course, the fairs were traveling carnivals more or less. And my family just didn't have the means in order to be able to do anything beyond go on our annual vacation, which was usually to visit my grandparents. And weekends were spent with at family gatherings, barbecues, picnics, days at the lake, days at the river. That was just about it. That I can recall, we didn't do anything else that I think would qualify as paid entertainment. So I grew up with that sense of never being, never really going anywhere. I guess I never learned to entertain beyond TV. I guess that would be the number one thing. Before we got our Nintendo, all you did was watch Saturday morning cartoons. You went to bed early, and that was it. I think the highlight of my, and this is how good my memory is for that time. When I was 6 years old, a traveling salesman talked my parents, who didn't speak a single word of English, into a set of Encyclopedia Britannicas. So we had the huge set that no one but me ever looked at. And of course, I couldn't read, so I just looked at the pictures. And I still have vivid memories of frogs and penguins and birds. But as I've gotten older, those memories have faded. But that was what passed for entertainment. So we had to go outside. So before we got a gaming console in the house. I remember as a child with my cousins that we would go on all day adventures. I remember getting lost in the wilderness at one point and traveling through endless fields of green grasshoppers, spider webs, trees, memories that kind of just slide in and out of my head of all day walking trips in in the wilderness. There's no other way of putting it other than there was no people, there was no roads, there was no way for us to find our way back. I remember walking through the mountains and having to eat berries on the ground because we didn't bring any water or anything. I was 9 years old and living your best life. Not like these kids do. Like, I mean, I've seen kids inside of playpens, right? Where the mom puts the iPad Pro, not just any generic, uh, what do you call it, electronic in there, premium electronics into cribs with kids as small as 2 years old, where they're just told to play with the iPad. And little kids learn really quickly to watch things. The I think what's that cartoon? Coco Melon. Oh my God! Every woman that I've met at work that has small children despises Coco Melon, but it apparently it keeps children entertained for hours, so they have to put up with it. But that's how we learn how to deal with life. There isn't a lot of money down there where I grew up. So parents have to come up with ways of dealing with children that get bored. 'Cause I remember telling my parents a lot that I was bored, and they'd just tell me to shut up. And I was just, you grow up with that. Well, my parents don't care if I'm bored. My parents don't acknowledge the fact that they have children. My parents were very much so in the mentality of all I'm here to do is provide food and a roof over your head. Everything else about your life, we don't care. And when you grow up in that world, where especially for single moms with large amounts of children, they don't spend their time wondering. It's like, I wonder if this is how this is going to affect my child when they become an adult. Children learn to become hateful. And I mean, I am the most bitter adult that I have ever met. All right, number two. Games have evolved from simple distractions to immersive virtual worlds where players can live out fantasies, explore alternative realities, and engage in social interactions. This evolution caters to human desires for adventure, accomplishment, connection, and often replaces the need for real world experiences that are harder to access. Desire for adventure. If I was watching, um, I don't watch actual television at the gym, but every once in a while someone will leave a screen on while I'm doing cardio, and you're kind of stuck unless you're going to get off your machine and walk over and turn it off. And it seems like every commercial for a car involves very happy people going really fast and having the time of your life inside of that car. No commercial ever shows the reality of what buying a car is really like. As in my life, I wake up, get in the Promobile, I go work, I come back from working, and I go inside and I close the door. The Promobile isn't taking me to uh, to adventure. It's not taking me to find cool friends that all seem to have money who are going to be riding in the back seat or riding in the passenger seat. In fact, I think I've only had two people in my car in the entire 3 years that I've had it. And both were in the passenger seat. And both those people I don't talk to anymore. So, uh-oh. My throat's starting to get weird, and the school teacher told me she was sick today. I asked her why she was working out. She's like, because I'm bored. Anyhow, so the sense of accomplishment comes from leveling up your character or beating the game. I think the last game that I beat was what was that game? It was one of the most dissatisfacting endings of any video game that I've ever played. And it was, oh my gosh, why is my memory so terrible for these things? BioShock. BioShock also happens to be the very first video game I played on PC. It was the very first gaming computer that I built. I'd never built a computer before this, even though I take that back. I'd never built a computer for myself. I started building computers for other people when I was in my early 20s for people who were too cheap to buy a store bought Dell computer or go to Best Buy or I'm going to date myself, Radio Shack. But the last game that I played was Bioshock Infinity. And I got to the end of that game, and the characters were so repetitive. Some of the scenes were so repetitive. And then you get to the end, and it just doesn't make any sense. It was very unsatisfying. I didn't even know that Andrew Ryan wasn't the final boss in Bioshock, the first one. I stopped playing it after you beat him up with a golf club because I thought a man chooses, a slave obeys. That phrase right there from a video game. A slave obeys, a man chooses. What is that? What does that expression in a person's mind like my own, right? A person with a strong belief in the Communist Manifesto. A man obeys, a slave obeys, a man chooses. It clearly shows that poor people don't really have many choices. That rich people make the decisions on what you're going to eat, the quality of your overall life. There isn't a whole lot of wiggle room between what you get and what's going to happen to you. And I know there's going to be a lot of naysayers in the comments. I just had a few of them. If you come into my comment section and you start saying things, stupid things, you're going to get either permanently banned or you're going to get your comment deleted. I don't care whether about your opinions. Slaves obey. And since the 99% are slaves and we can't afford anything, all we do is go to the jobs that we don't like. As a rich person, if you're out there watching this, if you're enriching yourself off the back of your minimum wage workers while you bring home record profits every year, and then you wonder why your business isn't doing so great. Well, look at your prices, look at what you're paying your workers, and look at the overall conditions of the life of your workers. Your workers depend entirely on virtual simulations for entertainment because that's all they can afford. They can't afford to do better. Everything about being a slave and having to obey every day is absolutely horrible. And people ask, it's like, well, why do you drink so much Pearl beer? Would you want to be sober all the time when this is all that you can afford? This place, this hole, this staring at this white wall for 10 to 12 hours a day? You think this is going to be what sobriety looks like? Is being in a house so small that it feels claustrophobic all the time? This isn't living. That's why we need video games. Because the slave isn't suddenly going to come to the conclusion. You're not going to walk to the bathroom mirror, look at yourself, and be like, you know what? A man chooses. I'm going to choose to live a better life. I'm going to choose to get a better job. I'm going to choose not to be single. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find the woman of my dreams, whether or not she likes it or not, because remember, most women just want money. It really comes down to it. At least in my experience throughout my entire life, if you don't have money, you're not getting any honey. And so I've grown up with that belief that all women are innately, uh, what would I put this? Conniving and evil when it comes to getting resources because they have to be, right? You know, most women, especially Susie Rottencrotch behind the Taco Bell, doesn't really have any need for children, right? The modern woman with her own job, working a corporate job, making just as much money as you are, doesn't really want children. She wants to have a good time. She wants things, right? She wants jewelry. She wants haircuts. She wants shoes. She wants clothes. She wants to be taken out to not Taco Bell. She wants to go out to the nicer parts of town. The average man cannot afford these things for Susie Rottencrotch. So, what does a man afford? A man affords video games. And let's use examples, right? And I'm not just talking about this as an abstract concept, right? I have my own prison, my own digital prison that I sat in here, just pushing these buttons. What was it? ASZ, ASZ, spacebar, ASZ, spacebar. Just over and over. I wish that I could have video footage of me sitting here for 12 hours staring at the screen as hard as I could, because sometimes those characters way in the back of the map are really hard to see. Or back in the Black Ops 2 days where people were still black scoping, where you could still quick scope people. It was like the biggest thing out there. People making montages while looking incredibly cool while they're playing Call of Duty. Well, they had to get rid of that. Anything fun in video games, they had to get rid of. Because when you're having fun, it means that other people are not having fun. And I think that's the society we've grown up in. Skill-based matchmaking is the worst thing to happen to video games since video games were invented. It turned every single lobby, every single video game that you play that's a multiplayer game, into an unpaid tournament. And I'm taking that directly, that's a direct quote from 402 Thunder, who's been saying this for what, 12, 15 years now? I was watching him play Black Ops 6 last night, and he's like, he leaves the lobby with the with a bag of money over his shoulder, and then he makes fun of everyone else in the lobby for doing this for free. And his choice of words for making fun of every single player that's in that lobby are like, basically, middle finger, I get paid to do this. And he gets paid really well. It wouldn't surprise me that on top of making a great salary, 402 Thunder, between his two gaming channels, probably brings home somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 a month. 14 to 20,000 views per day times 2 channels times 30 days. That's money. Also, sponsorships. That's money. He doesn't do video games to provide himself with entertainment. It's money. And that's the flip side of all of this, guys. You may be a person with no life, nothing to do, no girlfriend, no job, no family, nothing else to do but play video games. But the corporations are counting on you to fail at life. And they have programmed these games in order to be as addictive and as morally deficient as humanly possible, because they know who their customers are. They know that most of the people, like myself as a child, we didn't have a choice. My parent wasn't suddenly going to come into money and be like, you know what? My child isn't going to waste their lives with no adventures, no accomplishments, and no connections to real life. Why do you think Gen Z has shown up in the workplace the way that they have? Because their primary source of entertainment for the vast majority, I would say for 99.9% of Gen Z, was video games. And I know this because I've had several of them working for me, and all they do is play video games. They don't interact with other people. They may have their own like guilds or whatever online, but actual doing anything beyond that, they don't like leaving the home. And it's very hard to train people to be social when their entire lives have been virtual lives. And that means that when you have to talk to them to do anything, like the other day, I had to get a short with Gen Z, my current Gen Z, because He's like, well, I can't do something unless it's already set up for me. And I just looked at him like, not everything in your life is going to be set up. Sometimes you're going to have to think about how you're going to do something. And he just looked at me, his eyes got as big as silver dollars, and like, well, I don't understand that. Remember, you got to adapt and overcome in the workplace. When I took my current job, they didn't provide me a training manual. They didn't say, this person is going to help you out. I took the job and quickly saw why no one stayed. This desperation job involved a lot of figure it out. Those are the words that I've heard in the workplace ever since I started this job. You don't know how to do something? Figure it out. I don't have a manager. I have a sadistic president over my department that has gotten rid of 5 managers in 3 years. And why are they all gone? No training whatsoever. Figure it out. And then they make very costly mistakes. And we're not talking a couple $100. My Gen Z lost $5,000 last week. How am I supposed to tell the company president that Gen Z doesn't know what he's doing, and when you ask him about things that he does, he pretends he doesn't know anything about it? Just like the management above me. It's like, well, why is this happening? It's like, oh, we don't know. So just blame millennials, stay more. Whoever happens to be the senior manager in that position. I mean, I sat in a meeting with the executives 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, trying to explain to them why things are the way that they are. Everyone above me denied it. It's like Millennial Steam's making things up. The next day, the entire network goes down. You're like, oh, is Millennial Steam really still making things up? It seems like there's thousands of things that he seems to be making up. And I was like, I told you. That's really what it comes down to. You shrug your shoulders and like, I told you. But, coming back to the original point of the video. So I'm just going to read you guys off the taglines. Actually, I want to read this one real quick. The role of corporations. Corporations have played a significant role in normalizing video game addiction. Games are designed with psychological hooks like achievement system, loot boxes, endless progression loops to keep players engaged for as long as possible. Marketing campaigns often glorify gaming as not just entertainment, but a lifestyle, embedding it deeply into our culture. That's what corporations do. That's what every brand does. I hadn't even read this part, and I told you guys about a car commercial, a Coke commercial, a fitness clothing brand. It is embedding a deeply into our culture that you need to have Nikes or Adidas or Hoka, or I like personally wear my Vask shoes all the time, but I also have 5 different pairs of Hokas that I alternate through. Why? Because it's deeply embedded into our culture that you need to be a certain way. You may not have the resources to look a certain way, but everyone has an iWatch, everyone has an iPhone, everyone is trying to present the best face forward. We're full of phony smiles. In fact, right now when I was at Kroger's, all 3 of my favorite cashiers were within, I would say, within 5 feet of me. And I walked over to the one that lives across the street from me, and I said she was working inside of the lottery machine. And I asked her if she played the lottery last night, and she just looked at me like, I'm poor. I can't afford lottery tickets. And I said, that's the right answer. And I said to her, I was at Circle K a couple of weeks ago. No, maybe a couple months ago, I was at Circle K across the street, and there was a homeless guy in there buying scratcher tickets, and that's what she was doing. She was arranging the scratcher tickets inside of the machine. It looks like she was doing an audit of the scratchers tickets. Anyhow, I said to her, it's like, does anyone ever come up to you at the service counter and say to you, I need a few scratchers, and can I please, and when I win, I'm going to come back and I'm going to share it with you. That's what the homeless guy said to the cashier at Circle K. And I told her that, and she just said, that happens every single day while she works the service counter. And the reaction of the cashier was rolling her eyes into the back of her head for every time that she's heard someone play the lottery and lose. Because that's what the lottery is. I even said to her, it's like, you know what? You need to rub every scratcher ticket ticket that you sell on your belly, because every ticket's a winner. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because in America, every life is a loser. If you're not born into the prestigious class of our society, you're going to be somehow brought into the culture, which is very toxic, whether it's work culture, it's American culture, which is one of the worst that is has ever existed. Comparatively to other cultures, Americans have no culture. And so this creates the perfect environment where video games can thrive. Because when people can't see you eating ramen while playing Call of Duty, then obviously they assume that you're living your best life. But the reality is you're sitting at home in your underwear like I am, making a YouTube video because you don't have anything better to do. Anyhow, guys, I know I went off on a lot of tangents. I started out great, but this is a topic that I'm going to keep coming back to because I think it's significant enough to even base an entire series on this channel of how toxic video game culture is in our current environment and how we can't do any better.